If this looks silly, are we live? Hey, we're live. Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm so out of practice. I'm not used to talking to a church that actually has people in it, So it's really nice to see all of you tonight. All of you are here, and hopefully all of you who are joining us at home. We're not going to take a lot of your time, but what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through a couple of what I believe are very important items, explaining why we're here, how we're going to do church in the upcoming days, and what our new discipleship process looks like. But before we do anything, let's open in a word of prayer, and then at the end of the service, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you have any questions, feel free, raise your hands out in the audience, or if you're at home and you're watching live chat, type in your questions, and my lovely assistant, Michelle, will speak for you. So let's open in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you, acknowledging that you are Lord of heaven and earth. You created us. You sent your Son, Jesus Christ, to redeem us. You offer us eternal life through faith in him. You've given us your word and your spirit and your church. And I pray that you would use us in these last days to see many come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. You know we live in a time of fear with this virus and a time of unrest, and we are so in need of reconciliation, and we are so in need of healing in our land, and we are desperate for revival. And I don't know what else to do except turn my heart to you and say, God, help us. God, save us. God, revive us. There's a rift between races in our nation. Forgive us and help us to be agents of peace. There's a virus that's taking many souls. God, please give our doctors wisdom. And there's a church that is hungry for corporate worship. And I pray you give us wisdom as we go about it decently and in order. Bless us, protect us, and guide us. In your name I pray. Amen. All right. I want to open this evening with everyone's favorite story time with Pastor Mike. Yeah, tonight I will be reading The Sneetches on the Beaches, a Dr. Seuss classic. Some of you may be familiar with it. It begins now, especially to my audience back there. Do you guys know this book? I'm going to try without my tongue getting twisted now. The star-bellied Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain-bellied Sneetches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big. They were really so small. You might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the star-bellied Sneetches would brag, we're the best kind of Sneetches on the beaches. With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they'd snort. We'll had nothing to do with that plain belly sort. And whenever they met some while they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them without even talking. They never invited the plain-bellied Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark of the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them year after year. Yep. Then one day, it seems, while the plain-bellied Sneetches were moping and doping along on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. My friends, he announced in a voice clear and clean, my name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean. I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-up chappie. I've come here to help you. I have what you need. My prices are low, and I work with great speed, and my work is 100% guaranteed. Then quickly, Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine. He said, you want stars like a star-bellied Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard. So they clambered inside and the big machine roared. And it clonked and it bonked and it jerked and it burked and it bopped them about. But the thing really worked. Then the plain-bellied Sneetches popped out and they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start. We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old smarties. And now we can go to your Frankfurter parties. Good grief, groaned the ones who had stars at the first. We're still the best Sneetches, and they are the worst. But now how in the world will we know, they all frowned, if which kind is what, or the other way round? Then up came McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, things are not quite as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who. That's perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best niches on the beaches, and all it will cost you is $10 eaches. Belly stars are no longer in style, said McBean. What you need is a trip through my star-off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars so you won't look like sneetches who have them on theirs. And that handy machine, working very precisely, removed all their stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then, of course, those with stars got frightfully mad. To be wearing a star now was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into his star-off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you'd probably guess, things really got into a horrible mess. Then, when every last cent of their money was spent, the fix-it-up chappie packed up and he went, and he laughed as he drove in his car off the beach. They never will learn. No, you can't teach a sneetch. But McBean was quite wrong. I'm happy to say the sneetches got really quite smart on that day. The day they decided that sneetches are sneetches and no kind of sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day, all the sneetches forgot about stars and whether or not they had one upon theirs. The end. The wisdom of Dr. Seuss. And by now you might be wondering, what in the world does that have to do with anything, right? So Calvary, after a 10-week layoff, we are planning to reopen church this Sunday. And ironically, the only thing more difficult and controversial than closing church is when and how to reopen it. There are several issues that are lurking beneath the surface that could divide us like stars on sneetches, and these need to be addressed. We want to do things decently in order, and I want to communicate as clearly as possible why and how we're doing what we're doing. The first concerns why we're reopening church now. So let me share with you the reasons behind this decision. There are 12 that factored into this decision. This way, if somebody asks you, why is your church meeting? You give them 12 reasons, or one or two. But number one, and I believe the most important reason, is biblically, pastors and deacons are the final human authority for the local church, not the government. That means, according to Scripture, as a local, autonomous, self-governing, Bible-believing church, the pastors and the deacons of this church have the final say as to whether or not the church meets. And, number two, the church constitution recognizes this authority of pastors and deacons to open and close the church. If you have a constitution at home, you can look at Article 8, Section 2. Let me assure you, the decision to close the church back in March or reopen the church this weekend, it was made with the full agreement of the pastors and deacons. Number three, and here's where it gets complicated. During the COVID-19 crisis, we voluntarily submitted to every ordinance of the government. You may recall, we originally closed in March with the hope of reopening Easter Sunday. That didn't happen. Throughout April, the government kept pushing the date back. When New Jersey's governor issued a 30-day stay-at-home executive order, number 138, on May 6, we plan to reopen when the order expired, which is today, and everything was all set to go, no problem, until last night. The governor unexpectedly, without any prior warning or communication, extended the stay-at-home order, even though he stated that he foresees churches being able to open next weekend. So at this point, we are going to respectfully disagree according to Acts 5:39, and we are going to continue with our plans to reopen church June 7th. Fourth, we've sought outside guidance for reopening from the federal government, and we will maintain CDC guidelines. I have a copy of those guidelines. We are adhering to them. Fifth, we've also sought advice from other evangelical churches, both locally, across the state, and across the nation. Many have already reopened quietly. We're not the first church in New Jersey or in Little Egg Harbor to reopen our doors. Several others plan to reopen this weekend. So again, It helps to know that others, like-minded churches, are thinking the same way. Sixth, the only openly defiant churches have faced legal repercussions. I'm sure that's on all your minds. What happens if we are told to shut down, or we get fined, or we get in trouble? As you may be aware, some churches held a press conference where they either challenged or were antagonistic toward the government. Now, that was their call, and they felt convicted to do that. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying we're going to do things differently here. As much as lies within us, we're going to live at peace with everyone, and we have no plans to draw any unnecessary attention to the fact that we are reopening. We're just going to invite our members and regular attenders to come and worship if they like. Seventh, logically, there will be less people in our facility than any other business that's open at the same time. Now, reason isn't the only factor, but it is a factor. So logically, there'll be less people on our campus Sunday morning than at the local Walmart or Home Depot. And I know the rebuttal is that those stores are essential. My response to this is that while they may be essential by the new politically correct definition of the word, unless you are restricting your purchases to life-sustaining items, not flowers for your garden or ice cream for dessert or paint for your walls, then they are not essential. On Memorial Day weekend, my wife and I drove by Buy Right Liquors, a store I'm sure many of you are aware of, an essential establishment located across the street from a closed gym on Route 9 in Manahawkin, and their parking lot was over full. By that I mean there were no spaces in their parking lot, and cars were lined up down Route 9, and people were walking into the liquor store. Now, I'm not going to rehash the drinking argument, but you will never convince me that anything in that store is more essential to sustain life than corporate worship at a local New Testament church, even if our government says it isn't. Next, we have not received any guidance from local officials about when and how to reopen. Like us, they are honestly doing their best to follow, understand, and interpret what is a very nebulous situation in New Jersey, one that by their own admission changes not by the day, but by the hour. Ninth, for what it's worth, on May 22nd, President Trump declared that churches are essential. So regardless of your feelings about our president, he holds authority in this land. And considering the staggering increase of depression, substance abuse, and suicide over the last few months, I believe he was correct on this issue. Number 10, on June 2nd, the New Jersey governor encouraged mass congregating for peaceful protests. Setting the issue of protests aside, I don't believe it's fair, consistent, or legal to encourage mass gatherings on one hand while forbidding gathering for worship on the other, especially in light of the First Amendment. And as a matter of fact, when several municipalities were asked why they permit mass gatherings while a stay-at-home order is in effect, they all cited the First Amendment. So let me read it for you. Number 11, the First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So the First Amendment, if it still applies to other gatherings in our nations, then it still applies to churches. And unfortunately, from mid-March until the end of May, we have not been free to choose whether or not to gather to worship. Until now. Finally, number 12, there's a conviction of Hebrews 10, 24 and 25, which reads, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. I believe that's self-explanatory. So let me take you back to mid-March. I want you to know I did not recommend closing our church to our deacons and pastors lightly, because I believe as lead pastor of Calvary Baptist Church, I will be held personally responsible for that decision when I stand before the judgment seat of Christ, and it terrifies me. And I've questioned myself every day since. Did we do the right thing? I can't change the past, but I am convicted that we've been closed long enough. So, beginning this weekend, Calvary, you have the freedom to choose. You can choose how to exercise your religious expression, something you haven't been able to do for months. If you choose, you can come and worship at one of our 2 services. And if you choose to refrain, you're welcome to do so, but now it's a matter of conscience. That's why we're reopening June 7th. And as your pastor, now I need to remind you to respect one another's decisions. That means it would be very easy for those who choose to assemble to look with condescension on those who remain at home. And likewise, it would be very easy for those who remain home to cast a judgmental glare at those who venture out. And a sad phenomena occurs when Christians try to maintain moral high ground on matters of conscience. Typically, we start hurling Bible verses at each other. Some who choose to stay home may claim 1 Peter chapter 2, which commands us to be subject to every human institution, no exceptions, including the latest stay-at-home order. And if that is your attitude, just remember, sometimes human institutions get it wrong, like Nazi Germany or China's forced sterilization policy, or on a lesser, more local note, don't be hypocritical and drive 1 mile over the speed limit the next time you're late. And for those on the other side of the aisle who would drown them out by chanting, "Don't forsake the assembling! Don't forsake the assembling!" Yes, that's a command, but if we get hit by a hurricane in October or a blizzard in January, my guess is most of us are going to write a pass for that week with a clean conscience. So here's where sneetches come in. Or if you prefer, Matthew chapter 7. Don't judge one another. Judge not, lest ye be judged. By that I mean, if you believe it's in your best interest that you and your family stay home for any reason, you don't have to explain it to me or anyone. I'm encouraging you to stay home. You're free to do so. Just don't judge those who disagree. And if you are eager to come and worship, then you are free to come and worship, but not with an eye for who's here and who's not. Come with a heart to know God and love Him deeper. Now you have the freedom to choose based on your conscience. But with that comes a responsibility to make a prayerful decision for yourself and your family while respecting the choice of others. That's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is face coverings. The official position of the Center for Disease Control states the following: we, as a church, are to encourage the use of cloth face coverings among staff and congregants. Face coverings are most essential when social distancing is difficult. Note, cloth face coverings should not be placed on children younger than 2, anyone who has trouble breathing, unconscious, or anyone who's incapacitated or otherwise unable to remove cloth face coverings without assistance, and it goes on. That's a cut and paste. If the CDC guidelines read require, then we would require them. But they read encourage. And I'm not comfortable adding to anything the CDC guidelines include. So I will recommend, I will request, and I will encourage that everyone in attendance who is able and who is not on stage wear a face covering for the time being. And when I'm not preaching, I will personally submit to this as well for the sake of unity. However, I also want you to notice the CDC lists a set of individuals who should not wear masks under any condition. And some people do have pre-existing conditions, and HIPAA laws do not require them to disclose those conditions. So if someone is not wearing a mask and you encounter them at Calvary and it offends you, please give them a wide berth and respect their decision. And if you're not wearing a mask, please respect those who do and keep your distance. And if you are able to wear a mask, I request that you do so for the sake of unity. And that we all act in unity and remember what happened to the sneetches when they did not. While you and I will not give account for someone else's behavior, we will give an account for our actions and our attitudes, especially at a delicate time like this. So as a church, we are taking every possible precaution to keep you safe. Along with face masks, Here are a few others. First of all, as you know, we are offering 2 identical services, 9:30 and 11. This will greatly reduce the number of people on the grounds at any time, and we are not passing any plates or having a formal greeting time. Some have asked about the Lord's table. We're holding off for the month of June, and we're looking to resume first Sunday of each month beginning in July. We will not be having a coffee, bagel, or fellowship time. We are looking to resume that at some point in the future. We have created socially distanced aisles, as many of you are here have noticed. They are 6 feet wide to reduce the amount of people we can have at the auditorium. And we have socially distanced rows. We are seating every other row, using even rows for the 9:30 service and odd rows for the 11 o'clock service, so that you will not sit in a seat that was occupied by anyone else until it's been cleaned. And we're asking that you sit in a row with your family or with people who came with you. We have hand sanitizer at all the entrances. The church is cleaned and sanitized. We have a no-touch greeter, no-hug greeter rule at the door. I'm sorry, it's been very hard for some of our greeters. They have been instructed not to hug or shake your hand. We have restricted bathroom and building use. One set of restrooms will be for the first service, another set of restrooms for the second service. And finally, if you are sick, please stay home. Even if you're sure it's not COVID. We are not going to be taking anyone's temperature at the door. That is not required by the CDC, nor is it enforced in any establishment, so we're not going to practice that. But those are some of the precautions we're taking. But understand, nothing can guarantee that you won't get the virus. So please recognize, when you come to church or go to the store or open your mail, you assume a risk. We're going to do everything possible to reduce that risk, but we can't eliminate it altogether. So if someone does contact COVID after a church service, we will notify the church immediately. Also, we want to remind you, our original switch from 1 service to 2 services was not for the purpose of social distancing. As we reopen, our goal is to develop outreach-minded followers of Jesus Christ. And we will never accomplish that if we act like Sneetches. We have, over the past 3 months, developed a 3-step process to accomplish that goal. Step 1 is to do what? Go back, please. Go back, please. Thank you. Step 1 is to do what? Love God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. And yes, that includes trusting Christ to save you, but it also includes gathering together to worship Him. And that's our primary reason for 2 services, so that everyone at Calvary has an opportunity to worship God. That's the first step. The second is to love others by growing in your faith in a small group setting. So we want to be intentional about Calvary's groups going forward. We're currently reorganizing them as life groups, Bible studies, and recovery groups. And this fall, we're going to encourage everyone to love others by participating in a Calvary group. And finally, remember, Jesus commanded us to do what? Make disciples for the glory of God. That's why when we reopen, we'll be encouraging everyone to get involved with an outreach ministry so that you can take someone by the hand, metaphorically, and show them how to love God and love others. That's our process. I can't wait to see it in action. And now for the questions. I have a few I was given in writing in advance that I'll address, and then I'll open it up to all of you and to all of you at home. If you are present, just raise your hand. If you're watching it at home, feel free to type your question in the chat. First question. Go ahead, please. When will other ministries reopen? The answer is on a case-by-case basis. Once we are established with our morning services, we will open them up one by one, decently and in order, and according to our process of love God, love others, and make disciples. So we're starting with the basics, the morning service. Number 2, will we have VBS this summer? Yes. It's okay, Dave. Don't panic. Our plan is to go forward with VBS. Our governor has foreseen the reopening of day camps the first week in July. Our VBS falls under that criteria. It's scheduled for the first week in August. So barring any unforeseen circumstances, and let's be honest, 2020 is one big unforeseen circumstance. We are going to escape from Egypt this August. That is our theme. Yeah. And this year, the puppets will be open to teens and adults. If you are an adult who's always wanted to be involved in puppets, contact me. Third. Go ahead. Third question. Will you continue to stream the 11 a.m. service? Absolutely. As we have streamed it for years, we will continue to stream the 11 a.m. service live. Fourth, what has Calvary been doing since being forced to close? As leaders, we've been working very hard. As staff, we've been working very hard since the day we closed. We identified 3 goals to redeem the time. They are, number 1, provide high-quality, live, online worship. You may notice if you've been watching the services, we cut the time down by 10 minutes. And minus Pastor Kevin's awesome children's messages, we are going to keep that format. Well, not the children's messages. I'm sorry. Well, I know you're very disappointed. I am too. But he's done a wonderful job. Other than that, the services will be a little shorter. That's one thing we've done. Second, we have focused on reorganizing our ministry process. And this has been very challenging because it involves change. But to switch to 2 services, it not only fits our process, but it reduces the amount of people in the auditorium. And we have also cut several ministries that do not fit the process, including Athletes in Action and CASE. That's our children's Wednesday nights in the summer, just by way of example. Third, we determined to focus on one outreach for a specific need in our community. And early in the crisis, it became clear that that need was food distribution, and it has been amazing. When this crisis started, local food pantries shut down. We were the last one standing in Little Egg Harbor, and cars literally lined up across the parking lot and down the street, and they continue to do so. And our amazing volunteers and our incredible community have continued to provide food for 400 to 500 families every week. Fifth, will the Sunday morning children's ministries be any different? And the answer is yes, slightly. Families with children, you will now enter the service together and stay with your children. We will not have children sitting up front as before. At a designated point in the service, likely just before the last song, children from 6th grade to pre-K will be dismissed to the rear of the church where their teachers will be waiting. We're going to try this and see how it works. So if you have a child who's not in the nursery, please check them in and then bring them into the auditorium, and they will be dismissed after the first few songs. And finally, what if we're really crowded on a Sunday? What are we going to do? And the answer is we have plans for overflow seating in the main foyer. Those are the questions I was asked in advance, along with the masks and along with why are we reopening. Those are all the questions that I have prepared to answer. I now turn it over to you and anyone watching at home. Do you have any questions for me? Michelle has a question. Go ahead.
It's from online.
Okay, go ahead. Michelle has a question, but it's not from her. It's online. Good. Go ahead, Michelle.
When are we doing youth group again?
When are we doing youth group again? Is it okay if I share some of these things? Sure. Never. Pastor Kevin is enjoying it now. Well, first of all, can I just say thank God for our teens? The youth ministry did not stop here. All you got to do is show up Monday or Tuesday and see this place loaded with teens who are unloading pallets, distributing food, or doing anything else Kevin tells them to do, all for a slice of pizza. But he's really done a wonderful job organizing that. The youth are planning Miles for Mission a week from Saturday, correct? Miles for Missions. The youth are still planning their summer mission trip. The youth continue to meet online Wednesday nights at 8. And the youth are planning, after a 1-week break, to resume Wednesday night meetings. Is it June 28th? June 24th. So that's when youth will begin meeting again on campus. Pastor Kev, exactly what that's going to look like, I don't think we have that all worked out yet, right? No, we're still working on it. but we've got a date set and we've got a plan. And in the meantime, if you were involved in any way with this food distribution, especially as a teen, a lot of teens feel like they're getting gypped out of their mission trip. And this year, their mission trip was to go to New York City and work in a food pantry. I really have a sneaking suspicion our teens are going to show their food pantry a thing or two, especially based on the way I saw them work this summer. It was just incredible. This past yesterday, right? Yesterday we had, because of the incredible generosity of our church, our community, and a wonderful grant that was given us, we were able to buy a walk-in freezer so we can store a tremendous amount of meat on the premises. That walk-in freezer was delivered yesterday, and we were short-handed for young men to help us unload this 1,700-pound freezer. So we had 4 or 5 teenagers show up like that. That's how the youth have been this whole summer. I can't speak more highly of those guys. So well done, and that's what we're looking forward to. Any other questions? Michelle?
Will children's Sunday school be physically distanced as well?
We are going to do everything we can to maintain all guidelines in children's Sunday school classes. Dave, would you like to speak to that at all as far as head of the CE committee? Will children's Sunday school, children's church classes be physically distanced as well?
Yes, we will make sure that there's distancing guidelines followed.
Yes, we will make sure that distancing guidelines are followed. Dave has been working very hard with the rest of the CE committee to set up our children's ministries, including the fact that they're going to be using one side of or one classroom for the 9:30 service and another side or another classroom for the 11 o'clock service. If you know what the Sparks and Cubbies rooms look like, then you know what I'm talking about. There's a movable dividing wall. They'll use one side for one side for the other, after which the entire room will be sanitized and there will be physical distancing intact. So what a great question. Hopefully that'll answer your question. Another question?
How will the children's programs and nurseries be run?
How will the children's programs and nurseries be run? Listen, I'll be preaching, I don't know. No, they'll be run under the auspices of the CE committee the same way the CE has oversight over them in the past. In other words, they will be staffed, they will be sanitized. Of course, we're not going to put masks on children in the nursery. That is not legal. Nursery is going to be run the same way it was normally run. No major changes, right, Dave? Children's ministries from pre-K through 6th grade, when you come to church, you come as a family, and we are going to encourage you, sit as a family, worship as a family. When Pastor Dave gives the announcement, that's the time for your child to get up and make their way to the back of the auditorium. You're welcome to go with them. Their teacher will be waiting for them. Their teacher will lead them to the classroom for the next 45 minutes. While you are taught in here, they will be taught in there 40 minutes. And then after church, you are welcome to go and get them. During that time, they will be taught a slightly different structure for each one, but it's not like the kids are going to miss out. We're trying to create, or actually Dave and the CE committee have worked hard to create a situation where if a child is here for one service at 9:30 or 11, they're going to get fed. And if they're here for both, they're not going to be bored. They're going to be enhanced in each one. So I think they have a really good plan in place to run the children's ministries, and we'll be able to put that plan in action this weekend. Holly.
These are two loosely related questions. So we're not passing an offering plate. What will we be doing with our offerings?
We're not passing an offering plate. What will we be doing with our offerings? That's where the ushers will shake you down on the way out of the church. So it'll be fun. No, Jim, it won't be fun. Hey, as pastor, I get choked up just thinking about how good our church has been. In the early days of the shutdown, several individuals approached me saying, I don't know how the church is going to function without people presently here to give. I mean, last year we barely made budget. We didn't make budget. We barely made it. but God provided. This year, I kid you not, you all have given exceedingly abundantly above anything I can ask or imagine. We are doing phenomenal without passing a plate. Don't stop, but, keep doing what you're doing. Holly, somehow, over the course of 10 weeks, without ever passing a plate, our church is doing way better than this time last year. And I really believe it has a lot to do with God's faithfulness, your faithfulness, and the fact that we continue to reach out into our community. And that is just general offering. That's not counting how much is coming from people who have never set foot in this church but want to support the food distribution. And so if you look back to those boxes in the rear of the church, all you have to do is drop your offering in one of those collection boxes, or the box on the wall, or mail it in, or you can give online, or if it's a large cash donation, you could see me in the parking lot. I shouldn't even joke like that, okay? I'm sorry. Strike that, but you know what I'm saying, right? Just put it in the box, mail it to the church, give online, do what you've been doing, because what you've been doing is incredible. And God's going to use it we're going to pour it right back into our community and into our missionaries. Next question, Holly.
Okay, so the second question is there a plan to distribute communion in a way that is not going to have people touching everything?
You mean I got to throw it at you? Is there a plan to distribute communion in a way that won't have people touching everything? We're working on it. That's why I just said we're not doing it this month. We're doing it in July. We've looked into self-contained juice and cracker containers. We haven't purchased them yet. You know what? It's better than having people touch and break all the crackers. I think it's important that we observe the Lord's table. We haven't quite figured this one out yet. Can you give me a couple of weeks and let me hit you with a plan in 2 or 3 weeks for July 1st? The worst thing I'll do is say August 1st. But right now, we like to be able to come up with a plan in July. Jim.
As a trustee, I'd like to know if there's, in light of the social unrest, any changes in the security protocol.
As a trustee, have there been any changes in the security protocol in light of the social unrest? Yes and no. Because of the way our first impression teams works, there will be greeters at the door, and there will be individuals stationed at the Welcome Center the whole time, Jim. So our doors will be manned during, before, and after our services, which is going to give us a lot more security. During the services, our doors going to be locked. We'll unlock them afterwards to let people out, but otherwise we are continuing with the same measure of security that we had prior to this, which I believe was a good level of security. And I would say it's probably something we should discuss as trustees, and we should probably meet as trustees, But that's a great question, and that's the best answer I can give you right now.
Is there going to be one trustee for each service or the same trustee for both services?
Is there going to be one trustee for each service or the same trustee for both services? Again, a good question. I haven't thought that one through. I will contact the trustees tonight and see about getting it set up for this weekend. You going to be here Sunday? Yes. I'll get you on the list, okay? Thank you for being here as a trustee, and we'll get you going right there. I've also leaned very heavily on Pastor Kevin, Pastor Dave, Aaron Camillo, and Josh Grief. And I'll be asking them to step up during this time as well, while we're still working our way, transitioning from no church back to church. So hopefully, in the absence of trustees, I'll be asking some of those men to step in and fill those roles. But that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. Yes, Joanne. So then no Wednesday morning Bible study. Actually, Kevin was in conversation with the Bible study leader, and we have no problem with setting a date and reopening that earlier. Kevin will work that out with the leader, and when they agree on a date, they'll let you know. Have you made any contact or movement on that, Kevin?
Yeah, she wants to begin on June 24th or 28th, whatever that Wednesday.
She wants to begin the same. Oh, she's copying the youth, huh? She wants to begin the same Wednesday as the youth begin. It's either the 24th or 28th. Would somebody look that Wednesday up for me? I think it's the 24th. Okay, so then we will plan, along with youth on the 24th, ladies' Bible study on the 24th. We'll discuss this with our staff and confirm it, but right now that's what she's requested, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. So hopefully we can get moving on that. But I don't want to just announce this without discussing it with my staff first and making sure everything is clean and sanitized. It's a lot more work on our custodian, so we need to discuss this and confirm it. But we can start to discuss that, yes. Yes, Betty. How will the bulletin and the prayer list be available? We've redesigned everything. Hopefully when you come in, you'll see a lot of changes. The beautiful welcome center, the banners and the new process and the gift bags. The gift bags is a big thing. Does anybody have a gift bag here? Can I see a gift bag real quick? Jim, can I see yours real quick? Calvary. These are going to be visitors' bags that we give out, gift bags. And when somebody's visiting Calvary for the first time, our first impressions team is going to take them to the Welcome Center where they are going to receive a gift bag. And in this gift bag, there's a lot of really nice things. We have mugs with our logo printed on it. We're going to have neat little magnets with our logo printed on it. But this is the important thing. Do you all see this bag? When you see someone carrying this bag in the auditorium on a Sunday morning, what does that tell you? Don't scare them like a friendly colt, okay? 20 of you are like greenheads. No. Just understand that this is a greeter. And if you see them standing all by themselves looking scared and confused, maybe go up and say, hey, I've never met you before. My name's Mike. What's your name? Boy, what a great way to meet a visitor. So that's going to be at the Welcome Center along with the bulletins and the prayer lists. Everything is going to be at the Welcome Center. We're not going to be handing out bulletins or prayer lists at the doors anymore. Our goal is going to be to direct everyone to the Welcome Center where you can find prayer list, connect cards, bulletins, anything you might need. And hopefully not this week. We won't have any bulletins printed this week. Just don't be disappointed. But within a few weeks, we'll get the new bulletins printed. They're very nice. Aaron's worked very hard to put this together. And hopefully it'll be a lot simpler and a lot very helpful for you. So you can find them at the Welcome Center. Yes, ma'am.
So will the visitor or people coming in just get their own, or will someone at the Welcome Center?
Someone who, when a visitor walks into our church for the first time, someone from our first impression team is going to take them to the Welcome Center where they'll be given all of this cash and prizes. They'll be given the bag, they'll be given a bulletin, they'll be introduced to a deacon or someone who's working the Welcome Center. Their kids will be taken and checked in. We will bring them into the auditorium. We are going to treat our visitors like first-class citizens. And that's important because it really hasn't happened. Not that we've done anything wrong, but that a lot of people who come to Calvary feel overwhelmed. It's very crowded. We're a big, friendly family. Everybody's hugging each other. None of that. Everybody's talking to each other. Everybody's having their coffee. And visitors tend to feel like they just stepped into a family or a club and they're on the outside. By taking them to the Welcome Center to do all of this, we are going to do our best to make them feel like they're part of our family from day one. The Welcome Center will not be wearing gloves. Everything will be out for them to take. It's not that there'll be a physical exchange. So we're not going to require the wearing of gloves except for the changing of diapers or whatever. You guys in the nursery can work that one out, okay? Any other questions? Any other questions from home? Dave? Tuesday night dinner at the New Ross house. By the way, congratulations to our new grandparents here. Not new, but Brian, if you're watching from the hospital, and you better be, we're very happy. Because there's nothing like kids to boost attendance by one. So congratulations on baby Hannah. So the community meal, like many other ministries, are going to be implemented one at a time, most likely beginning this fall. We don't have any plans to serve the community meal sooner than this fall, and we are still assessing. We're going to continue with our food distribution. Of course, our morning services, we have plans for 1 or 2 others, but please understand, we're opening very carefully, very slowly, honestly, very quietly. We're not trying to draw undue attention yet. We'll shout it from the mountaintops this fall, but we've got a lot of changes taking place, and we're trying to do it decently and in order. So, this fall. Any other questions? Any other questions from home? Well, seeing none, Calvary, thank you. As your pastor, thank you. Thank you for being faithful. Thank you for coming out. We love you. We hope to see you all Sunday. We respect the fact if you don't come, but please watch us online. And as soon as you feel safe, please come. Please join me in a word of prayer as I close, and then you'll be dismissed. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this evening where we could talk about some pretty serious issues. I mean, I know I started with the Sneetches, and it's a lot of fun, but I don't ever want to be like them. We, as your children, want to be like Christ. And this world needs a lot of people who want to be like Christ. People who are going to reach out in a crisis. People who are going to respect one another's wishes. And people who are going to worship you sincerely, regardless of whether it's in this building or at home. These are very trying times and very difficult waters to navigate. And I confess freely before you and my church, I'm not sure. Please give us wisdom. Help us make good decisions. Help us have a good testimony. And help us honor you even when it's hard or we have to go against the flow. We love you, Lord. And in the end, we want to stand before you with clean hands and pure hearts. So please help us to do that in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless. Good night.